Hey guys, welcome to the video for this week. Going to be talking about selective incorporation, um, which has to do with the 14th Amendment and how it makes itself like the superpower behind the Constitution that makes it apply to the earlier amendments. Um, as you read through it, which I don't feel the need to read the whole thing to you, you can read. Focus on the word liberty. This is what makes the parts of the Bill of Rights apply to the states. Um, so before it was just the Fifth Amendment. Now it applies to all of them, or at least it will in time. It doesn't happen all right away. They get incorporated slowly, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So I mentioned the Fifth Amendment, the important part being down here, the nor deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Those are where the two are going to relate. And we'll talk about this clause, about the due process clause of the Fifth Amendment and of the, let's see if it'll go back. It won't go back. And of the 14th Amendment regularly as we move forward. So one of the interesting things about incorporation, when we wrote the 14th Amendment, is it didn't make the whole Bill of Rights apply all at once. Instead, it does it on a case-by-case basis, incorporating a few rights a little at a time. Prior to the passage of the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court actually ruled that the Bill of Rights did not necessarily apply to the states, only the federal government. The idea of incorporation makes, especially at that time, made a lot of states very angry because it limits their power of what they can do, and it strengthens the power of the national government. To date, most all of the Bill of Rights, at least, has been incorporated to include the states. The third, seventh, and the last part of that grand jury portion of the Fifth Amendment have not happened yet. I don't think the Third Amendment ever is going to wind up being incorporated, at least not anytime soon. I don't see quartering soldiers being an issue that pops up for us in the near future. You all can read, but when I talk about the due process clause, again, this is what I'm talking about. This is where it pops up in the 14th. All right, so the first Supreme Court case I want to look at with you all is Gitlow versus New York. So what Gitlow does is that it, first of all, overturns Barr v. Baltimore. It holds that the First Amendment are among fundamental personal rights and liberties, and that they can't be taken away or, and what by any means, lessened by the states. And this is the first case, the first real case of incorporation. One of the most recent ones would be the Eighth Amendment in 2019 on excessive bail. All right, up next, we got a lot of Supreme Court cases. I know y'all love these things. You've been doing those case sheets. Now I'm going to be talking about them. So hopefully you recognize these as we go. So I won't spend too much time talking about them. All right. So McDonald versus Chicago. This is a relatively recent case happening in the last decade. And this is what incorporated the right to bear arms. The Second Amendment was deemed to be one of those fundamental rights. Let's go back a slide real quick. It, too, was determined to be one of the fundamental personal rights and liberties that the founding fathers wanted to make sure couldn't be taken away. All right. Highly recommend this quick video. Very informative. Helps you learn about McDonald versus Chicago. If you've forgotten what it is, click the link in the slides. All right, up next. Oregon v. Smith, 1990. 20 years ago, but still relevant. So Oregon v. Smith has to do with religious liberty. You all can read, but essentially these two guys were fired for the use of peyote because of their Native American religious practices. In this case, it limited religious practice. It's essentially held that, hang on. So essentially, you can't get out of like following the law because of religion. So what they're saying is that if they start doing this, it opens up the possibility of people getting out of all like obligations based on religion, and that majority was written by Anton Scalia. So before we move on, make sure you know you can describe what incorporation is, which constitutional clause incorporation is based on. All right, it's the 14th Amendment. You can go back and look at it. And how does incorporation alter the balance of power between states and national government? You can find that in one of those first slides. Remember, it makes the national government stronger, states weaker. And then describe Chicago versus McDonald, or McDonald versus Chicago, sorry. Making the Second Amendment one of your defined rights.